50 messages, most from his family, a few from his editor. Only one thing would have his family reaching out in droves. The pit of his stomach lurched as he read the first one from his twin brother Sam. "There's been an accident. We need you." 1 week later. Tabitha Brodie slid open the door to the lower malting house and stepped into the cool, tangy interior. The smell, similar to sourdough bread, acted as a sedative, making cramped and tired muscles relax and breathe a sigh of relief. The sight of almost 3 acres of germinating grain spread out before her like a pathway to riches. She didn't need the riches, but she did need the solitude, and at this time of day, with the first turn complete, no one would bother her or discover her secret. She turned and went up the small stairs to her left and came out on the tiny balcony overlooking the crucial ingredient to her family's heritage. "What's left of my family?" Grief swarmed her limbs, and she collapsed into the straight-backed chair against the wall. 3 weeks, and it hadn't gotten easier. Less frequent, but not easier. Squeezing her eyes against the sting of tears that fell more often, thanks to both the circumstance and the surge of hormones, she clasped her hands across her stomach and focused. Willed the grief back into the tiny compartment, she locked her love and memories of her father, Colin, and sister Maisie inside. Being upset wouldn't help, her or the new life growing inside. Another deep breath and Tabby stood, almost immediately overcome by nausea. "Damn morning sickness." Instantly she regretted the curse. She'd read that the more sick she was, the healthier the baby would be. She'd hug a damn toilet for the next 28 weeks if it meant the baby was healthy. Using the wall for support, she moved across the small balcony to the pump and bucket sitting beneath it. In through her nose, out through her mouth, Tabby kept her stomach in line as she worked the metal handle, cold spring water filling the bucket. Reaching into her back pocket, she pulled out a handkerchief and soaked it in the cool water. Wringing it out, she placed it across the nape of her neck and slid to the floor. "I can do this. I have to do this. For Maisie and Isaiah." She'd been hanging on for almost a month. It would get easier, and eventually she would have help. When she finally shared the news. Stroking her stomach, she let her mind catalogue all that needed to be done today, and how she could manage it without stumbling and causing someone to look closer than they were. Tabby laughed. Grief made people stupid, and she meant that in the most loving ways. Anyone who knew Tabby would have had antennas straight up when she'd handed over her tasting duties to her young apprentice, Mateo. Everyone knew the whiskey from Brodie's didn't get bottled unless her taste buds, or her father's, had approved. But her father was gone, and she was pregnant. She was doing the best she could under the circumstances. She closed her eyes and remembered the first time her father had brought her to the malting house. They'd watched the workers turning the grain. "By hand is the only way," he drilled into her. The only way to ensure quality was to have your hands and eyes on it at all times. He then picked up the grain and dropped some in her hand. "See the sprouts?" He'd pointed. "The beginning of the magic." She'd caught the magic that day, essentially becoming her dad's shadow. He never talked down to her level, instead forcing her to rise up to his. Tabby would miss her father for many things, but his blind faith and constant push for her to be the best person and version of herself, that was a dull ache never to be filled. Except by the one person she would never let fill it. Where was he? Why hadn't he come home to be with his family? To be with me. The last thought rankled the most. She shouldn't want his support, want him to help her, encourage her. These circumstances would bring out his overprotective tendencies, and that was a slippery slope to obligation. Obligation she would never allow him to have, because it would eat away at his soul. She hadn't seen him in 15 months, but that night at the wedding she had allowed herself to indulge, to live a fantasy for one night, to believe for one night that a future between Eli and herself was possible. The clang of a metal pulley was her first indication of intrusion. Tabby froze. No one should be coming in there. Not only had the morning turn been completed, but it was the distillery's slow season between the spring harvests of the South and the fall harvest of the Midwest.